This has been one of the most unusual NBA off-seasons I can remember, and in free agency specifically, it's gone down in a manner that weirdly still doesn't feel complete despite the month of August approaching its end. As a result of this, despite the fact that I have already made 2 videos on this subject, I'm still sitting here feeling the need to make a 3rd edition because there are genuinely way too many players still unsigned on the open market, which brings us to today's video. Today we will be going through 5 more players that I can't believe are somehow still available free agents 2 months into the period being open. And as I mentioned before, I have already made 2 videos on this topic previously, so if you're wondering why some of the bigger names are missing, they were probably already addressed in one of those ones. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll be discussing today that is still a free agent despite having a clear, helpful skill set is Malik Beasley. I know, this inclusion seems like a bit of a cop-out due to the circumstances he found himself in, but basically I just wanted to discuss his situation now that everything has been cleared up. Beasley started the summer finding himself under investigation for his potential involvement in a gambling scandal, and because of that, no teams wanted anything to do with him when free agency opened up. This week, that investigation has finally come to the conclusion that he had no involvement in anything of the sort, clearing his name, and unfortunately for Beasley, that means that a lot of the money that was available to be thrown around in free agency market has dried up. He was easily worth a fairly lucrative offer in the tens of millions of dollars per year range, coming off of one of the best seasons of his career where he averaged about 16 points per game, shooting about 42% from 3, while taking the 4th most threes per game in the entire league with the Pistons, making him one of the most valuable sharpshooters of the year. Detroit were fully intending on bringing him back in free agency too, but when the investigation got underway, they were forced to pivot and use that money that they would have given to Beasley to sign Caris LeVert and Duncan Robinson instead. Beasley will still have plenty of suitors and should get signed sooner rather than later, but unfortunately, he may have to sign a shorter term deal to re-enter free agency maybe next summer so he can lock up a better contract for the future then. The next player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent is Markelle Fultz. Fultz is a former number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft whose NBA career was pretty much immediately derailed by a shoulder problem that has hampered his play ever since. I get it, Fultz is on the verge of busting and has come nowhere close to reaching the once sky-high potential he displayed at University of Washington, but acting like he's completely ineffective on an NBA court is just not accurate or fair to him. In his time on the Orlando Magic, Fultz held down the starting point guard job for a majority of the time that he spent there, and just 2 years ago, he was averaging a solid 14 points and 6 assists per game, shooting 51% from the field. Fultz also ranked tied for 9th in the whole league in steals per game that year, snagging 1.5 of them per game, and through it all, has always had incredible burst and speed with and without the ball in his hands, an incredible first step to beat defenders off the dribble, outstanding touch around the basket to finish in a plethora of different ways through traffic, natural passing and playmaking instincts, and a useful mid-range jumper. Fultz, with his shoulder issue, has never been able to extend his shooting range out to the 3-point line reliably, and in today's NBA, floor spacing, especially from the backcourt, is as crucial as it's ever been, so I get why there is hesitation to sign him. But even if it's as an emergency option deep on a team's bench, he obviously has the talent to be on an NBA roster, and is still just 27 years old, peaking physically. The next player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent is Melton. Melton has flown under the radar as one of the league's better 3-and-D guard talents over the last 5 years, using his 6'8" wingspan to hound opposing ball handlers. Melton even ranked in the top 5 of the NBA in steals per game in both 2023 and 2024, jumping passing lanes, generating deflections, and poking balls loose better than most, showcasing his value comes by willingly doing the dirty work that a playoff team needs from their role players. Add in the fact that he rebounds well for a guard and he knocks down threes at an above average clip, and you get a player that pretty much checks all of the boxes that teams should, in theory, want from an off-ball player. The problem at the moment, though, is that Melton has struggled quite a bit with injuries over the last 2 years, dealing with nagging back issues 2 seasons ago when he was still on the 76ers, and then last year with the Warriors, he unfortunately tore his ACL just 6 games into the tenure. So I'm not unaware of why Melton is still unsigned, I'm just saying I believe he is 100% worth the risk. At this point in the offseason, and given the circumstances, Melton could almost assuredly be had on a minimum contract, so the cost isn't even much of a risk at all. If he can't get back to where he was pre-injury, then you can just keep him stashed at the end of the bench or waive him if push comes to shove, without losing any sleep over it. But if he can return to prior form, then you get a high-level, starting caliber shooting guard with playoff experience and reliable two-way play at a huge discount of all discounts. He's the ultimate low-risk, high-reward type of signing, and a few months from now, there could be a lot of teams kicking themselves over passing on him for so long. The next player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent is Thomas Bryant. Bryant was bounced around a lot over the last few seasons, playing for the Wizards, Nuggets, Lakers, Heat, and Pacers within a 4-year stretch. His place in the league has come from the fact that he is a skilled big man on the offensive end with a jumper that has proven to be useful in stretches. Admittedly, his jumper has been a bit inconsistent year to year, but he has had seasons where he's shot over 40% from 3, so that kind of potential as a stretch big man in the modern era should always be at least a little bit intriguing as a bench piece in a team's rotation. Bryant plays with a high motor, always giving it everything he's got on the floor in the minutes that he gets. He's a solid rebounder inside, and he's been a great locker room presence everywhere he's gone. He was just a member of the Indiana Pacers during their run to the NBA Finals too, and even though he wasn't a consistent member of their playoff rotation, he did give the Pacers huge minutes off the bench in their closeout Game 6 against the Knicks to advance to the finals by knocking down 3 big threes to spark the run that separated them in that game. Bryant, however, is not a very good defender, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that. What has held him back from consistent minutes lately has been because his defensive impact is just not where you would want it to be at the position that is required to anchor a defense. He doesn't block many shots, and it's been disappointing that he hasn't been able to use his 7'6" wingspan to alter as many shots around the rim as many hoped for him early in his career, but I also wouldn't say that he's a liability on that end either. He absolutely has the skill and talent to be a backup center in the NBA, especially in today's game where there are still teams lacking in center depth to the point that they're relying on small ball lineups instead. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing that is somehow still an available free agent right now is Landry Shamet. Shamet is 7 years into his career now, and after a few dips in production in 2023 and 2024, he bounced back pretty well despite the odds being against him last season with the New York Knicks. When your spot in the league is based on the fact that your primary skill set is as a sharpshooter from 3, and you find yourself on thin ice shooting below league average from 3 for a season like he did the prior year with the Wizards. This year though, Shamet bounced back and knocked down 40% of his threes, scoring about 6 points per game in about 15 minutes per game off the bench. He was even dealing with a shoulder injury at the beginning of the season, so the fact that he was not only able to shake that off, but also gain the trust of former Knicks coach Tom Thibodeau to earn a role when Thibodeau is notorious for shrinking his bench as much as possible, means that Shamet clearly provided enough to warrant playing time at this level, let alone just being signed to a roster. Landry Shamet is another player that can be had for the minimum, with one of the most important skills in the league being his best trait. I'm not going to sit here and act like he's the most well-rounded player, or that he's more than what I'm describing him as right now, but what he's good at alone should be enough to at least continue his NBA career, and I have a good feeling he will be on a roster come October. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these players and where they could end up signing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.